should have everybody muted. So today we're speaking with Alabama Arise. And I have something to say. Let me pull it up. I'm sorry. So first off, our presenter is Mike Nicholson. He's the Southeast organizer with Alabama Arise. And just to tell you a little bit about Alabama Arise. So they're a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan coalition of congregations, organizations, and individuals united in their belief that people in poverty are suffering because of state policy decisions. Through Arise, groups and individuals join together to promote policies to improve the lives of Alabamians with low incomes. Arise provides a structure in which Alabamians can engage in public debates to promote the common good. They're a 501c3 nonprofit, and I'm going to hand it over to Mike Nicholson to host this presentation today.
Great, thank you so much, Amanda. So thank you all so much for being here. My name is Mike, and that was a very nice introduction. I've worked with Alabama Rise for about 3 years. I grew up in Alabama. I went to the University of Montevallo as an undergraduate outside of Birmingham, and I went to the University of Alabama for my graduate degree. So I have a lot of roots in Alabama, and I definitely am invested in making it a better place. So I'm going to quickly attempt to share a short presentation with y'all, but I definitely want to make sure that I leave time so that if we have questions or we want to talk, more conversationally, that's always an option as well. So do y'all see the presentation?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. So this is kind of a short little outline, just so you know what we're getting into. I do want to introduce Arise pretty quickly. I'd like to introduce you to the issues that we're currently working on. Hopefully some of those are issues that some of y'all might care about as well. There's a brief section on how you can get involved if these are issues that matter to you. And then I always like to kind of end on some next steps that folks can take if they are interested in getting involved. So as Amanda said, we're statewide, so we do advocacy work at the state level. We don't help individuals. We kind of work on changing policies that affect everyone in Alabama. We're nonpartisan. We have groups from, Republicans, we have Democrats, we've got independents, pretty much everyone who wants to move the state forward in terms of our work on poverty. And we're nonprofit, so we are mostly funded through individual memberships and group memberships and some grants from some national founders. We have about 150 member groups that we work very closely with. Most of these groups are churches, but some of them are social justice groups. Like many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the Southern Poverty Law Center. That's one of our member groups that we work with very closely. And we have over 1,700 individuals that are members of Arise. And so we have a very unique membership-based model that I'm going to share with y'all. And to me, it's one of the things that makes me most excited about the work that we do is being so directly connected to people in the state. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on. So to put it simply, and Amanda kind of hinted at this as well, we work to change state policies that improve the lives of all Alabamians, but that especially focus on folks with low incomes. So however you want to refer to that, we've referred to it as people in poverty. We're increasingly referring to people with low incomes, but people who have trouble surviving on their own, people who have trouble maintaining basic necessities on their own incomes. Oops. So this is a couple of bullet points from our mission statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing to y'all, but some of the highlights are: we believe that the causes of poverty are systemic. We don't believe that individuals are in poverty because they make poor decisions. We believe that overall, the biggest reason why folks struggle is because we're part of a system that is making it hard for low-income folks to escape poverty and make it really easy for folks who are on the cusp of poverty to fall into poverty and not get all that much help. So there's systemic barriers, and those are the barriers that we want to remove by addressing poorly thought out or cynically, intentionally thought out policies, depending on how you look at it. A big piece of our work that we're growing to understand and embrace is that there's no economic or social justice if there's no racial justice. In Alabama and many states in the South, we have a complicated and unfortunate relationship with the way that we purposefully pass laws in order to disenfranchise groups of color, especially African Americans. And we're seeing that a lot of those decisions are affecting the lives of people of color in our state today. And so that's work that we're trying to understand and become involved in. But you can't really talk about, economic injustice without talking about racial injustice as well. So that's a growing part of our work. And probably the most important piece is that we think that policies are most impactful and most democratic when the folks that the policies are affecting are the ones that are being listened to when those policies are being passed. So we have a system of government in Alabama that was designed to minimize the voices of Alabama's citizens so that the fewest voices possible could be heard. We've had the same constitution for over 100 years. It's the longest constitution in the world, literally the longest constitution in the world. And one of the biggest problems that we face is that our state has restricted cities from being able to address local problems. And so policies that could, help Montgomery or help Birmingham have to be approved at the State House. And that leads to a lot of problems. And so a lot of this stuff is intentional, and a lot of it is stuff that it's going to take a strong, dedicated, unified voice in order to overcome. And that's pretty much what our work hopes to do. So here's a simple model of how our organization works. We have a membership, and every year when we have our annual meeting. It's always a fun event. Members come from all over the state. Our member groups participate as well. Everyone shows up and they select our issues. So the folks who give us the money to organize and to come up with the research are the same folks who get to vote and select the issues that we work on. So this is a real important part of what we do because it keeps us grounded and it keeps us from focusing on issues that might not be all that important to folks. So a piece of this, and this is just a short little kind of tangent, every summer our organizers go out into the community and we meet with groups, especially low-income groups, and we try to find out from them, what are some of the biggest barriers that you face? And what happens almost every year is the issue that I'm the most excited about, that I think is the most important, is almost never on the radar of the folks that we're trying to serve. And this past year, I think the best example was voting rights. To me, so many of our problems stem from our state preventing certain folks from voting. So I go into these listening sessions and almost nobody mentions voting rights, right? Because most of them are so focused on transportation so that they can get to work, so that they can find a job and take care of their families. So a lot of groups that do similar work to us in other states, I would see it as a weakness that they're disconnected from the folks that they're trying to help. And so they'll spend a lot of their time and effort on policies that at the end of the day might be important to them, but aren't that important to the low-income folks in their state. So we're really fortunate that we have such a great relationship with the people that we work for. And so they help us understand the issues that they face. And I think that's a really important piece of what we do. Once our issues are determined, we have a policy team. We've got 4 policy analysts that put out reports. They come up with really helpful fact sheets to help people explain issues. And this is the stuff that we share with the community. We have a legislative team that's mostly one guy, and he mostly meets with legislators to talk about policies, to talk about our work and what we're doing. And then our membership, that's so important, we equip them with the tools that they need to be advocates for their own communities. So we give them the research, we give them training, we give them updates, and this allows them to be the ones who are fighting for their communities and fighting for low-income folks in their areas. And then the final goal and the final step is that our members are able to advocate for themselves and fight for the issues that they care about. So these are our issue priorities that were selected last year and that we've been working on this legislative session that's about to end in a couple of weeks. So we were founded on issues of tax reform and adequate state budgets. And I'll talk about each of these individually, but this is just a quick little overview. Our membership also selected for us to work on criminal justice reform, which is a pretty broad topic and involves a number of different areas: voting rights, payday and title lending reform, death penalty reform, and then this year, for the first time, we're working on universal broadband access. So making sure that everyone has access to the internet. So these are the issues that we've been working at the state house this year. Our members will meet again in September, and they'll select the issues that we'll work on for next year. So it could be an entirely new slate of issues other than tax reform and budgets, but it's more likely that we'll keep working on these same issues, or maybe add one off and take one off. So here's a graph that demonstrates the problem that our state has when it comes to taxation. We have a very regressive tax structure in Alabama. Folks that make the least amount of money pay the highest proportion of their income in tax compared to folks that make more money. So the more money you make, the less you pay as a proportion of your income in taxes. So this is the exact opposite of the way our federal tax structure works. It's the opposite of how most state tax structures work, but it's very common in the South. And what happens as a result of this is that we struggle when it comes to budgeting because we can't raise enough revenue. But as you can see, folks who make less than $18,000 a year are paying more as a proportion of their income in taxes than people who make almost $500,000 a year. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of that is purposeful. Some of it is lazy writing in terms of coming up with laws. But on the left are some policies that we think would help address this regressive tax structure. One of the biggest and most important issues that we work on every year is working to undo the state tax on groceries. We're one of 3 states that fully taxes groceries, and as you can imagine, a tax on groceries is incredibly regressive. A family that makes $20,000 a year spends a much higher proportion of their income on groceries than a family that makes, $500,000 a year. And so untaxing groceries would be a really simple, easy way to help low-income folks. And like I said, we're one of maybe 3 states that does it. We also have problems when it comes to our income tax bracketing. Our income tax bracketing is very generous for the wealthiest Alabamians and allows them a lot of opportunities to get out of paying taxes on certain things. We recommend a temporary surtax on millionaires, and we oppose corporate tax giveaways, which is something our state is pretty notorious for doing. There's a lot of research to suggest that, especially states in the South, but states that struggle financially in general, offer a lot of incentives to companies to come, put plants, build stadiums in their states, and then the states end up essentially losing money because the state offered them so many incentives. So this is something that we're working against because this is costing Alabama money that we could be investing in our people. And then, of course, Alabama, lowest property taxes in the nation. You could double our property taxes and we'd still be in the bottom 10 in terms of revenue from property taxes. So our incredibly low property taxes underfund schools, and it creates a very unequal distribution in terms of, school funding. So we have some of the most well-funded, best schools in the country, schools like Mountain Brook, Hoover, and then we have some of the worst funded with the worst outcome schools in Alabama as well, because our property taxes are structured the way that they are. So a lot of the issue that we have when we're working on helping people understand the issues that low-income folks in Alabama face is the kind of perception of the people that we're trying to help. So I like to share this graphic on Medicaid because Medicaid is so important to Alabama as a state. It's really the backbone of our healthcare system, and it helps so many low-income folks in our state. Believe it or not, more than 1 million people in Alabama are on Medicaid. So Medicaid is the subsidized health insurance program for low-income and disabled folks. So of those who are on Medicaid, 50% of them are children, families with children. 10% are around 10% are elderly. 17% are pregnant women or they take care or a person who takes care of a disabled person, including children or a parent. And 22% are people with disabilities. So the majority of folks who are on Medicaid in Alabama and can work, do work, right? There's this perception that it's a bunch of unemployed folks. Most people who get Medicaid are on Medicaid because they can't work, or if they can work, they do. And most of the folks we're talking about are children, elderly, and disabled. So to be an adult and to qualify for Medicaid in Alabama, you have to be taking care of someone with a disability and make less than $350 a month, right? So that's not exactly a very high bar, right? We have a very, very, very low limit, and that means that most Alabamians don't qualify for Medicaid. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Medicaid expansion and how we're working on that this year and what that would entail. But essentially, Medicaid covers it covers 1 million Alabamians, and it's pretty much propping up our entire healthcare system in this state. The problem is that because we didn't expand Medicaid, we're having trouble keeping rural hospitals open. We're having trouble keeping the cost of premiums for non-Medicaid recipients down, and we're running into all sorts of problems as a result. So our efforts to expand Medicaid is part of a coalition called Cover Alabama. At this point, 38 states have expanded Medicaid, only 12 have not. If we had expanded Medicaid when the Affordable Care Act was passed in 2008, 2009, the federal government would have paid 95% of every new Medicaid enrollee. So for every 5 cents we put in, we would have gotten 95 cents from the federal government. We didn't do that, and now the matching rate is 90%. But part of the new incentive package that was passed by Congress and signed by President Biden recently, part of that was a huge package of incentives to get states who haven't expanded to expand. So a lot of projections show that if we expanded Medicaid, it would gain the state nearly $1 billion over the next 2 years in profit, right? And that's not including the economic boosts that come along with Medicaid expansion that we know happens. So we have a situation in Alabama called the coverage gap, right? And so what that means is in Alabama, because we set the bar so low to qualify for Medicaid, you have to make less than $326 a month and be taking care of a disabled person. If you're an adult without disabilities or without a child with disabilities, you can't qualify at all. Because that is such a low bar, there's a significant number of people, and most of our research shows that it's between 300 and 350,000 people, and this was pre-pandemic. It's likely that number has gone up, who don't have health insurance because they make too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but they don't make enough money to qualify for the subsidies offered in the marketplace exchange that was created because of the Affordable Care Act. So these 350,000 folks in Alabama don't have health insurance because they fall in this gap between Medicaid and subsidized health insurance from the federal government. So what expanding Medicaid means is raising that line so that more folks qualify and allowing those 350,000 folks to get health care. And this is going to improve our economy. It's going to improve the health of low-income people. And it's going to save our rural hospitals that are closing at an alarming rate because they can't afford to keep offering services to folks without health insurance. So this is a big part of our work this year. Another big part of our work has been voting rights. Alabama has a history of discriminating against groups of color when it comes to voting. We have a history of making it difficult to vote. When I was in high school, we passed one of the most restrictive ID laws in the nation that required people to have an ID. And then right after that, Governor Bentley closed 13 DMVs in counties that had majority Black citizens, right? So this may not have been intentional, Some say it was. I'm going to assume it wasn't, but at the very least, it's negligent and it's going to have a disproportionate impact on low income folks and people of color. And so one of our biggest initiatives is automatic voter registration. So this is something that's been done in Washington. Even Georgia implemented this system last year. And what it does is it uses the state's system, it uses DMV information, it uses all sorts of state systems that are already in place to automatically register folks to vote when they turn 18. So when you apply for your license at 16, you check a box that says, when I turn 18, I want to register to vote, and then you're automatically registered to vote when you turn 18. This is fine in a state like Alabama because we already have a voter ID law. There's not really an opportunity for voter fraud, which is something that a lot of Republicans in our state legislature are concerned about. We already have a voter ID law. This isn't going to make it easier for folks to vote when they shouldn't. What it's really going to do is it's going to save the state money because they don't have to have offices open to register people to vote. We don't have to deal with voting applications. And it's going to increase the number of people that can vote. There's a whole lot of folks that work during the same hours that these buildings are open, and they just don't have the time or the money to take off work in order to drive, for some folks, an hour to get to the closest DMV in order to register to vote. So this is a great step in the direction of making our state more democratic, and we're working very diligently on that. In Alabama, another problem that we're facing, especially low-income folks, is the powerful industry of payday lending. So in the 90s and the early 2000s, the payday loan industry carved out exceptions to banking rules so that they can charge up to 456% interest on the loans that they offer. On top of this, these loans are most often given out for a period of 10 to 14 days. So when you take out these loans, and we know that the majority of them are taken out by folks who are struggling, maybe they can't pay their utility bill that month, maybe they had a medical emergency or a car emergency that they just couldn't, they didn't have the savings to deal with. They take out a loan, they have 10 days to pay it off, and if they can't, they've got a 456% interest rate. So what happens is folks take out one loan, and then because they can't pay it off, they take out another loan. They only end up paying the interest on the principal and not the principal itself, and they get trapped in this cycle of payday loans. And so a lot of states have outright banned the payday loan industry because it's so parasitic, it's so aggressive in the way that it targets low-income people. We have helped write and sponsor with allies in the legislature what we call the 30 days to pay bill, which would require payday loan stores to offer these loans for 30-day periods. So it's like a bill, like any other bill you'd have, and it would cap interest rates at 200%. This is still unacceptable. It's a compromise, but it's a step in the right direction to stop taking advantage of low-income folks. Our state is struggling with our criminal justice system. If you've been following the news, our prison system was so understaffed and so crowded that the Department of Justice actually sued our state and told us that we had to find a way to improve the prison conditions that our inmates are living in. As a result, Governor Ivey announced that she was going to spend, I think it was around $3 billion building new prisons and then allow a private company to run them, which leads to all sorts of problems that I won't get into. Recently, we found out that deal, it looks like, has fallen through. So we're kind of back to square one. But the biggest issue that we have in Alabama is that we've criminalized poverty. So a lot of people get a speeding ticket or a parking ticket, and they can't afford to pay it because they're living paycheck to paycheck. What our state does that a lot of states don't do, and this is something that we're working on, is their first reaction is to suspend that person's license. So now that person has the option to A, not work, or B, drive with a suspended license. So it's this systematic escalation, and what it does is it ends up throwing people in prison essentially for being poor. And so we work on all sorts of things. We we're working right now to overturn the Habitual Felony Offender Act, which is a really terribly written law. It's essentially like a three strikes law that allows folks to be incarcerated for 40 to 50 years for three very small crimes. There's all sorts of laws like that in Alabama that make it really hard on low income folks, especially for things like marijuana possession. So in a state, 100 miles away, you might be able to do something on your porch. And in Alabama, if you do it 3 times, you can spend 40 or 50 years in prison. It's not right. It's not justice. And it's overcrowding our prison system. And it's criminalizing people for being poor. Universal broadband access. This one, I think we're all kind of experiencing. This was something that before this year, I don't think a lot of people would have understood. But now that we have a lot of folks who have kids who are taking school, who are learning online, folks who are working from home, we're realizing just how important internet access is and just how unevenly distributed it is. You can look at this graph and see that the lighter colored areas, the more rural counties that we have, really struggle to provide families with broadband access. And so we're recognizing that internet isn't really a convenience anymore, it's a necessity. And folks need internet to find jobs, to work, for their kids to do well at school. And so we're working with Representative Terry Sewell at the federal level, and then members of our state legislature at the state level to make internet more affordable and to make sure that every household can afford internet. The last issue is death penalty reform. So in Alabama, we have a long and complicated history with the death penalty. We're one of 3 states, I believe it's either 2 or 3, that does not require unanimity for death penalty cases. So in most states, for someone to be sentenced to death, all 12 members of the jury have to agree. In Alabama, you need as few as 10. So many folks are on Alabama's death row because 10 people on a jury instead of 12 agreed that they should receive the death sentence. In Alabama, until 2017, we also had judicial override. This was a very, very horrible practice where a judge could override a jury that chose not to sentence someone to death and send them to death row of their own volition. So we worked with the ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center, and in 2017, it was actually the first piece of legislation that Governor Ivey signed that ended this practice. However, it's not retroactive, and this means that there's 35 people on Alabama's death row who are there not because a jury sent them there, but because a judge overrode a jury to send someone to death. This is extremely problematic, especially because we know that there's a lot of research that shows there's a whole lot of unfortunate but strong relationship between the death penalty and poverty, politics. So we live in a state with elected judges, and race. If your victim is white, you're more likely to receive the death penalty than if your victim is a person of color. We have overwhelming evidence to support this. So there's a whole lot of problems with the death penalty. We have folks on death row who are put there by a judge, and our death penalty is unfortunately being used as a political tool and is being used in a racially unjust manner. And so these are things that we hope to correct with legislation. So we're here to help. We're here if these are issues that matter to y'all or people in your neighborhoods, in your communities. We can provide research. We have really well written, easy to understand fact sheets on all of these issues that you can share with your neighbors and your legislators to help people understand the problems that our state faces and the solutions. We help with messaging. You can sign up on our website to basically join an email list that will alert you when there's an issue. So like if Medicaid expansion is important to you, you can sign up for alerts so that when it's time to call Governor Ivey and ask her to expand Medicaid, we can reach as many folks as possible. So we try to make it as easy as possible for y'all to act on the issues that you care about. And then we offer all sorts of support with our organizers. So I cover the southeast corner, which includes Montgomery, but we have an organizer for each corner of the state. We offer trainings, we offer presentations, I offer a presentation for every single one of these issues I covered, where we talk a little bit more in depth about the particulars and the solutions. So we have all sorts of support for folks who want to get involved and who want to work on these issues. So some next steps that you can take: vote. I know that most of the folks I'm talking to probably do vote, but voting is so important. A lot of folks get disenfranchised, disillusioned, lots of reasons to feel like voting doesn't matter. But it is important, right? It's incredibly important that we keep voting and that we make sure that everyone can vote. That's a really important part of our work. You can connect with us on Facebook. We have an active Facebook. We have an active Twitter account. You can sign up for those action alerts. And we also offer a daily news digest. One of our members wakes up. He used to be in the Air Force, so he wakes up very early. He wakes up at like 3:30 or 4 every morning, which is like my worst nightmare. And he compiles a long list of links to news articles on all of the issues that might matter to our membership. So every morning I get an email with like a page full of links, and it's like, here's a link on something that happened in Missouri, on like Missouri chose to expand Medicaid, for instance, right? There's a link to that. You can go check out that information. So we try to make it easy for you to connect with the information that you're interested in. You can attend issue previews. So we have all sorts of online events right now during the pandemic, but normally we'd be traveling into the community and offering presentations. I have presented to neighborhood associations in Montgomery before. You can invite an organizer to speak to your group or your church. I'm happy to come, share any of this information with anyone who will listen. And most importantly, probably you can contact your legislators. So it's really tough right now. Legislators right now are avoiding phone calls. We do know that they're receptive to handwritten letters, but contacting your legislators can make a huge difference. If we have just 5 of our members contact a legislator over an issue, we hear back from that legislator because so few people actually reach out to their legislators. So this can be a really important step that you can take to influence the process in Alabama. So here's my contact information. I'm happy for you to send me an email. This is our office number. They can put you in touch with me. And that's our website if you want to go sign up for action alerts or join. We'd love to have you as a member. We generally ask for just a $15 donation every year, and that lets you vote on the issues that we work on, and it gets you plugged in with the work that we do. And the more members we have, the more clout we have when we're talking to a legislator about policies that you might care about. So thank y'all so much for the opportunity to share that with y'all. I appreciate it. And I know that all of us have a part to play in making Alabama a better place.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was incredibly informative. I took a page of notes because I did not recognize that y'all did, exactly what you did, but then that you all did so much. I have a couple of questions that I wrote down, but I'm going to give other people the opportunity to ask questions first. So if you're on the phone with us now, you have a couple of ways to unmute yourself. If you're on your computer, then you should just be able to unmute. If you're on the phone, then you can press *6 to unmute yourself. But you can also, if you're on the computer, you can put your question in the chat. So does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask?
Amanda, I would like to ask a question. If you can hear me?
Yes, Annette, yes, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to ask Mike, as far I know he mentioned they work with legislature and all of this with policies. Is there any work with the governor or anything else, or do they just go through the legislative party?
That's an excellent question. Thanks, Annette. So we pretty much use whatever avenue is available. So we definitely do. We encourage people to meet with legislators because legislators tend, during a regular session, they tend to be more available, for instance, than the governor is. But we certainly have worked with the governor before. We have a good relationship, and most of the time we find that, like, the governor or a legislator, for instance, they care about low-income folks. They just don't realize that the policies that they're passing and the laws that they're signing are impacting them the way that they do. Like, we go in to meet with legislators and members of her staff. We don't meet with her directly, for instance, but like working with the Medicaid staff on expansion, for instance. They just don't understand like the types of folks who are on Medicaid. Like, I don't know if y'all remember, but 2 years ago, we tried as a state to pass a law that would add work requirements to our Medicaid recipients. So that work requirement was aimed at the 75,000 people who are taking care of a disabled child full time and make less than $325 a year. So by adding work requirements to those folks, what they're really saying is, you're going to have to find someone to take care of your disabled child so that you can go find a job. So it just shows that they're just disconnected and out of touch. So if Governor Ivey will listen to us, I will talk to her all day about it. If a legislator will talk to me about it, we'll talk to them about it. We had a letter writing campaign and a postcard campaign that targeted Governor Ivey, and we're actually pretty sure that that's the best avenue for Medicaid expansion is through Governor Ivey's office, and we just have to convince the legislature to kind of go along with it. So that's an excellent question. We definitely, any avenue we can take, we will take it. So we generally have less of a chance to work with Governor Ivey's office, but we certainly will if that's what gets the job done.
Awesome, thank you. Rosalind, did you have a question? I saw that you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I do. Does untaxed groceries include untaxed medicine?
No, ma'am. So it does not. That's a separate issue that I can definitely see concern with. This is solely focused on food. There's debates over what food it would cover, but most people wouldn't consider it to be like packaged food. And it would only cover the state proportion of grocery tax. So local governments would still tax it, but the state would not.
Great, that's a great question, Rosalind. Something I didn't consider medication. All right, so I want to ask a question. You kind of answered. I was really curious about membership because I was thinking you're talking about membership. You must have to pay a lot of money, but you're saying it's just $15. I even checked it out on the website because I was curious about it. So if I pay a $15 membership, then I'm invited to this annual meeting and I can have a voice in the issues that you choose each year. It's just $15. Is that for real?
It's absolutely for real. And to be completely honest with you, the $15 is requested, but I would never, we would never turn down someone who wanted to be a member. So part of our mission is to work on behalf of low income folks. So we would never want to deny, a low income person the chance to be part of our organization because they couldn't pay. But we find that $15 is generally, pretty doable for most folks. But if you can, send me an email and we can get you signed up even though you can't pay the $15. The $15 helps, allow us to do a lot of the research and the organizing we do, but having the members that we have is the core of our work. Being able to reach out to, let's see, what's an example? Representative Blackshear in Phoenix City, right? He's the chair of the Financial Services Committee, and our payday lending legislation got stopped in his committee because he gets funding from the payday loan industry, right? That's something that we ran into last year. So we didn't have any members in Phoenix City. So we couldn't have folks call and say, I'm a constituent and this is bothering me. So I started a year-long process where I got about 25, 30 new folks to get involved in Phoenix City. And so now when I contact him, I can say, I've got 30 folks who vote in your election and they're concerned about payday lending. So the money is helpful. We have to keep the lights on. We have to pay our staff. But the more important thing is that we have folks who care about the issues, are engaged, and we can use that leverage when we're working with legislators. And so I encourage anyone to be a member. You can sign other people up to be members. We have gift memberships. And if you sign up, like your spouse is a member as well. If you're married. So it's kind of a numbers game in a way, but it also allows you, like you said, you can come to our annual meeting, and if there's an issue in your community you care about, like Auburn last year, I know they were really working on a proposal about gun violence. So you can get together and submit that for our membership to vote on as well. And you get a lot of access. You get access to me. You get access to all the resources and presentations that we give. So yeah, I'd love to have anyone join as an individual member, or if any of your neighborhoods want to join as a group, that's also an option. Because the more groups we have, the more influence we have as well.
That's great. That's amazing. So it seems accessible, more accessible that way. And I love the part there. It is a suggestion, so you are trying to be more inclusive. I think that's great. It looks like Al, do you have a question? You want to unmute yourself again and ask?
Hey, thank you for doing the program today. I've been a member, or we've been a member for years now. Share about the sustaining memberships, and monthly contributions.
I think you blipped out just a minute. The sustaining memberships is in people who give like monthly. Is that what you asked?
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for folks who have a little bit more and want to give more, we do have when you sign up on our website, you can basically put a credit card on file, and you can offer a monthly contribution, or some folks have a yearly contribution. It's really up to you and whatever you can afford. But we do have some really generous folks in Alabama. Some of them do give monthly, and that is, we greatly appreciate that. And I'm bad about asking for money, like I said, but that is definitely an option if that's something that you want to do.
That's okay. It's not from asking for money can be difficult. It's not for everybody, so I get it.
Yeah.
I was kind of curious about the recent lottery bill that's been proposed, talked about, taken back, the other people are working on. Would that help fit into your 2021 goal of adequate state budgets? Are you all trying to advocate for that?
So we've been getting that question a lot, and I wish I could give you a more clear. I don't want to dance around it. So I will say that there is mixed research on the impact that lotteries have on low-income folks. And so Arise officially doesn't have a stance on the lottery. We do appreciate that a lot of the funding that would come from a lottery would go towards something like education, for instance, which would be helpful. But there's a lot of research that shows that lotteries tend to be a regressive tax on low-income folks. So low-income people disproportionately tend to participate in a lottery. But that being said, and this isn't Arise, this is just me, people are going to use the lottery. They're just not going to use Alabama's lottery. So there is an argument for a state lottery. Arise doesn't have a position on it. We just, if we do pass a lottery, we want to make sure that that money goes to places it should, somewhere like expanding Medicaid or towards our education system to make it more affordable.
That was a great answer, I think, and a point of view that I had not thought about with the lottery. So thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions?
Hello, this is Joyce
there.
Roberts. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Did you have a question for
Joyce
Mike?
Roberts with Ridgecrest Southern Metals. I was trying to get in, and I couldn't get in on the computer nor on my phone. So I was wondering if any way that I could get the information sent to me or something. I just got it off the phone and don't know. I didn't get into what was going on. Just now I could get in with y'all.
Oh, absolutely, Joyce. I'm sorry that about the issues with getting in. Stay on the call for a couple of minutes, and I'll give you some options for getting the information.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Mr. Wagstaff, how are you doing?
Everybody called me Wag. Amanda, and to Mike, I just want to say this is the first time I've tuned into this, but I was very much impressed with the information that was presented, especially about the voting rights and the expanding and Medicaid. And those were the issues I looked at years ago when they first passed the Affordable Care Act, which I thought the Alabamans had a golden opportunity to do some great things, but through some reason and unbeknown to us, and I guess they thought some other way that was an opportunity they just squandered. And now they're dealing with the Voting Rights Act, which is really just trying to suppress people to have the right to vote. And I appreciate your attitude toward that, because a lot of people think that this shouldn't be done or shouldn't be said. But if we don't address these issues, the only thing going to do is cause more chaos and problems in our state and in our nation. And we have to realize that we have to address these issues. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to join Alabama Rise because I think what you're doing is very positive. And I always like to be a thing that a positive that's going to help not just the rich or the poor, but everybody.
Well, thank you so much. And I completely agree. It was an incredibly unfortunate and spiteful decision not to expand Medicaid. And every day that we don't expand it is a day that we're losing money. And Alabama Rise as an organization and me as an individual could not be less enthusiastic about this recent slate of voting restrictions that are being proposed at the State House. You know, our legislators sometimes can get bogged down in their ways, and we're going to fight it with every tool that we have because we think voting access should be expanded, not restricted, and we live in a democracy. So thank you for your comments, and we appreciate your membership.
Amanda, this is Sandra.
Hey, Sandra.
Hi, from the Vaughn Meadows Neighborhood Association. I had to step away a minute. I wanted Mike to repeat how to become a member. Is there a form or somebody? I missed that part of this conversation as to how we can become a part of a Rise. I was with the Alabama Law Institute for several years, so I know the work that you all do. And also a shout out to Mr. Alan Grove. I was president of Jeff Davis PTSA. Hey! Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. So to become a member, you just go to www.alarise.org, and there's an icon on the homepage that's like a red heart, and it says donate. You just click that, and it asks for some basic information. And all it takes is a credit card. It usually takes people about 3 minutes, or a debit card, and it asks for $15. But there is an option for you to click other if you want to give more or less.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Sandra. Yes, I went onto the website, pulled it up really quickly. It's very easy to find. I didn't click on the red heart option, but there's another option for get involved. And there are all those other things about getting involved, action alerts, subscribing. So the website seems to be very user friendly, and I appreciate that. So if we don't have any other questions, I'm gonna let Mike go so that we can everybody else stay on the call, and we'll take a quick roll to make sure that I have everybody in attendance. So I'll give one more opportunity for questions. You can unmute yourself on your cell phone by pressing *6. Anybody else?
Yes, this is Carolyn Howard from Medicaid Neighborhood Association.
Hi,
And I
Carolyn.
just wanted to ask, I just wanted to ask if well, for number one, I wanted to commend him on all the information, because I have gotten things in the mail from Alabama Rise, and I threw it in the trash because I had not been informed about the work that is being done. So I won't do that anymore. But and I thank you very much for the information that you've given, and I'm going to certainly take it back to our organization. But I wanted to ask now, if we come in as a group, is that still $15, or is there a different pay scale for the groups to come in? The association.
Thank you so much for your question. Yeah, so for groups, generally groups give a little bit more, but we actually have, part of our mission is to require that a certain percentage of our board members and a certain percentage of our groups come from like low income communities, for instance. Okay. So not saying that yours is, but what that means is we're flexible, right? So just like with individual memberships, we're flexible with groups. Our bigger mission is to have as many groups and members as we can. And if you would like to look into becoming a member group, some member groups, we ask for $500 a month, or a year, but some groups pay $150. And if that's too much, of course, that's also, we would never want that to be a deal breaker. So if you're interested in that, please you can reach me at Mike@alarise.org, ALARISE.org, and I'd be happy to walk you through that process. It's just a little form where you talk about your organization, and our board would then vote on your membership, but we'd love to have you on board.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Very helpful information. Thank you again so much, Mike, for joining us today. This has been very informative. I will go ahead and let you go. Let me, I think I need to stop making you the presenter real quick. One moment, sorry. Okay, so you should be able to leave, and everybody else stay on the call so we can take a quick roll. Thank you again, Mike, and it was great.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for your time. I appreciate it, and I hope I'll see you again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Bye.